Hey everyone, welcome to G News. And as I said earlier in the week, we've had this great idea of actually getting to know some of the G News audience a little better. Today we've got a special guest who's been a regular G News contributor, a very good one, and that's David Evans Bailey. So I'd like to welcome you, David, to the show. Welcome on board.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very flattered that you want to talk to me.
Yeah, well, see, that's because you're a humble guy, and
Oh,
but you're a really great writer. And I think a lot of the people that read G News over the years have actually really appreciated the way that you can sometimes say exactly what people feel, and you just nail it sometimes in your writing. Where do you think some of that talent comes from?
well, my family were all very sort of literary, not in the sense of reading, Tolstoy or anything like that, but I came from a family that read a lot of books, um, things like romances by Georgette Hare and um, science fiction and Gerald Durrell and various other things. And my one of my sisters used to tell me stories when at bedtime, and so did my dad. And they were all sort of reading stories to me. And my sis, both my sisters are artists. In one's a visual artist, and the other one is a writer in her own right. Um, so I suppose I
Yeah,
just grew up with it.
yeah, writing's in the blood.
Yeah.
Um, so you've also appeared in quite a number of photos in a PhD gown. What was that PhD and doctorate all about? What did you study there?
Okay. So it followed on from a master's that I did at the University of Brighton, and one of the things that struck me that was a master's in digital media art, and I was very curious about the what I call digital mergence, which is the mergence between the digital and the physical world. So the doctor was really looking into immersive virtual reality. What it turned into was basically creating what I coined the term of synchronous reality, which is a immersive environment but with physical parts attached, so that you can actually sit on things and feel things physically as well as visually. And it turned into like an art installation, an inquiry into, let's say, whether you could create a virtual environment where people, it might sort of, people might connect with their own memories. The final installation was a caravan site where I had lived in Yorkshire for 2 years. I sort of recreated parts of the caravan and all of the ambient sounds and various other things, and you would just spend time in there. So one of the things about it was it's very, very sort of calming. Um, I suppose it's coming at virtual reality from a very different way, rather than trying to make a game out of it or whatever. It was just a passive environment where you could just be there and chill out.
That's an amazing study. It's quite interesting. Uh, what did you conclude? What were the kind of the main conclusions?
Well, the main conclusions were that you could create this sort of calming environment, and that the what we call the quality of immersion, or the what's called being there, was heightened by having those additional physical elements. For example, the auditory, the sounds and the ambient sounds, and being able to touch things, so that people became very, very immersed in it to the point where they forgot where they were. I ran the installation at the North Campus of AUT for about 56 staff who came and
Wow.
experienced it, and they were supposed to sit in the installation for like 20 minutes, in time slots, but because some of them, because the time slots weren't sort of concurrent, I'd let some of them go on, and they'd just go on, and you'd go and touch them on the shoulder eventually, and they'd like, whoop, because they were totally in a different place. Another weird thing about it is that I had a day-night cycle, so you had the sun and the moon going round, and it went in a 10-minute cycle, and you'd sort of think that that might be quite disruptive, because we don't live in a 10-minute cycle just as well, really. But in actual fact, people they just got used to it straight away. It was like the way that people adjust to virtual environments, and even, you know, there's a lot of talk about realism and it's got to be realistic, but actually people adjust to virtual environments that are completely unrealistic. So there's some surprising
happens every
things.
3 years here.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Just back on writing in general, you've written a whole heap of books, haven't you, David? And maybe you could tell us a bit about that, and particularly how you know so much about Spitfires and World War II and
Okay.
that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I originally started writing during my PhD, and I've always wanted to be a crime novelist. I've written other books, but never published them because when I started, you know, publishing a book was a whole different process. You know, going through a publisher, and there wasn't ebooks, and so I've written a crime series and a series about a lawyer in all obviously fictional in Ireland, and then and these were all published through as independent publisher. The World War II thing came about because the publisher that signed me up held a competition, and you could submit in certain genres, and one of them was World War II aviation thriller. Now, I've always been fascinated by Spitfires, World War II. I knew quite a lot about it then, but I know a hell of a lot more about it now. So I entered the competition, and I invented a fictional squadron, because it's always easier not to use real people, called the Spitfire Mavericks, who were basically pilots who've been thrown out of all the other squadrons for various reasons, and it's written from the viewpoint of the hero. And I sent in the requisite 2 or 3 chapters or whatever it was, and a synopsis, and you're going to think that I'm now going to say I won the competition, but no, I didn't actually. I didn't win the competition, but I got a email saying, well, you didn't win the competition, but we really like your story, and do you want a 3-book contract?
Oh, that's great,
Like,
isn't it?
where do
Yeah.
where do I sign?
Hell yeah. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. So in
Very cool.
2022, I spent all of my spare time, because I was working full time, writing the first 3 books, and they came out, I think, in 2023. And after that, I got another 3-book contract. And then I suggested, my publisher suggested a series to me, which I haven't written yet. And I also came up with a series which is another completely fictional story called the Secret Sirens, which is a all-women mosquito squadron flying into combat, and that obviously not in the UK, it never happened. There were Russian women pilots in combat, and a surprising number of women were in combat and have been in combat over the years, but it's sort of been obfuscated, because we don't want women going into combat, that sort of patriarchal type of view. So I thought, well, it'd be interesting, how would this work if it, and it would have to be top secret, so it's actually been very well received. I wouldn't say it's the Spitfire one is more popular. This one, though, I wasn't sure what the reception would be, but it's actually been very good, and some very good reviews, not just from women but from men. And I've enjoyed writing it because it's just like a completely different. And I don't see why women couldn't have flown in combat. In fact, they've probably been, dare I say, better than the men. And one of the most famous prolific snipers in World War II was a Russian with something like 300 kills.
Wow.
A female Russian.
Yeah, better at targeting, eh?
So, that's... at the moment, I've got 2 5-book series, 1 6-book series, and I'm just about to deliver the 7th, and a 3-book series.
Wow, you've been busy.
And I've got another 3-book series which I've got to start writing, so I'm busy for
You are.
another 6 months of that. And then I guess I hope as long as my publisher's happy, which they seem to be, I'm going to just keep writing as much as I can.
That's fantastic. Now I'm just going to do something a little bit random here. You, at one stage a couple of years ago, you actually recorded a song and you sent it to me, and I created a small video.
I was trying to remain very anonymous about that.
But time has passed. Time has passed, so no one's going to bother. But do you actually have a little bit of musical recording background? So what's that about?
Well, I've always been into music. As soon as I could, I wanted to play the guitar. And the only guitar that there was my brother. He played guitar. Was a broken Hofner. The neck had broken off, but it was a really good guitar. So I got some plastic padding. You remember plastic padding? Stuck it back on, and then I got a correspondence course. I learned to play guitar. Then I wanted an electric guitar. My dad was like, "Why do you need an electric guitar?" So he forced me to build one. I built this electric guitar, and the only problem was it didn't. I mean, it would have worked, except the neck wasn't strong enough. I made the neck, put all the frets in, and bearing in mind that I was like 14, 15, did all this. He helped me, and then finally, I don't know, maybe I passed the test and I got an electric guitar. We had various bands at school. We played at the sixth form dance once, and the headmaster didn't like our music, so threw us off the stage. So that
Must have been good. It was probably righteous. Yes.
no, it was just probably not that musical. I don't know. Anyway, yes. Then I went on, and I thought I want to have a career in a band. So I got these guys together, and we practiced in the garage, and the neighbours hated us. And various other things like that. And then I stopped around about 18. I stopped playing. Then I was my kids went to a school where there was a rock school. One of the teachers ran rock school, and I started playing again and singing, and I performed. They used to have these concerts, so I performed. And also, I'd always had a yen to do the Blues Brothers, so me and my eldest son did a Blues Brothers show a few times, and that was the best fun ever.
What's your favourite Blues Brothers song?
I just can't think of one, really. Everybody Needs Somebody, probably, or something.
Yeah, that's a great one, isn't it? Yeah, I love that.
We didn't only sing Blues Brothers. We sang all kinds of numbers. We did Purple Haze and Brown Sugar. And
Yeah, all the good
blues,
ones.
as the
Yeah.
Blues Brothers. And then after that, I don't know. I stopped playing. I do have a guitar and I do have an electric, but I haven't played it. I think I've got frustrated because you know, to move any further, you have to put in a lot of time and practice, and I haven't done it.
Just speaking of your dad there briefly, I have a very small little bit of memory there about, didn't he meet Peter Ustinov somewhere
he
over,
did.
was it Papua New Guinea or somewhere? Where was
No,
that?
he and my mother split up, and then he went off to Christmas Island and did
Christmas
a
Island.
census there. Then he went to Tuvalu, and actually visited him there once, and then he went to Kiribati. And I think it was, and he sort of, well, after he retired, because he was working for the government in various guises, he he had married an islander there, and yes, Peter Ustinov was doing a program about all these islands, and he met my dad, and so I've still got that bit of footage somewhere. But
Yeah.
yeah, my dad came home with his second wife, and unfortunately she died of cancer quite young, and then he died in his 90s, and so is my mum, deceased. So they've all passed away.
Yeah. Oh well. When did you come to New Zealand, David?
In
Roughly.
2015, the reason I came here was to do a doctorate, because I wanted to do a doctorate after my master's, and I tried to do one in the UK. It's terribly, terribly competitive, and I just thought, well, okay, let's apply to New Zealand out of the blue, and it's one of those things. I'm a firm believer, if something's going to fly, then it's got wings, then it'll fly. And if it does, then jump on the plane. But if it doesn't, you know, never mind, we'll try a different thing. And it did fly. So, yeah, we eventually came.
Yeah. And you saw quite a lot of first-hand effects of the Tories in the UK, didn't you? Do you want to tell us a bit about what that was like firsthand?
It's just it's very frustrating, because I think, you know, a lot of us were taken in by Margaret Thatcher, by privatisation and so forth, and one of the reasons is because her government gave away all these incentives, you know, like, oh, we're selling British Telecoms and you can buy shares, hooray, and you'll make a huge profit. And people who did buy shares did make a huge profit, but of course that just all got bought up by corporations. So great, you bought them at a lower price, you made a bit of a killing. I didn't make a killing, by the way. I did have some shares, but and then, you know, it was all supposed to be, yay, it's all going to be so much better, but it isn't. You know, years later you look back and you think, well, why isn't it? And it's because, you know, it no longer becomes a public service. It's like, well, the shareholders are the most important people, making money for the shareholders. Now, if you think about public services like water, the health service, it's for people. It's a social. I'd almost say it's a social obligation, you know, for people to help other people, you know, and because you know, there's this saying: if you lift everybody up, then the whole place rises. And unfortunately, what it really turned out was that the Tories were simply lifting up their own. And then you've got the gap becoming wider and wider. And then, yeah, we all thought, you know, when the Liberal Democrats went into coalition, we all thought, you know, they'll temper the Tories, which they did to some degree, but not enough. For example, you know, the university fees went from £3,000 to £9,000 a year term, or a year, or whatever it was, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's $18,000 domestic fees, you know. Then, of course, David Cameron made the biggest mistake of his life, which was to introduce the Brexit referendum, thinking that it would never happen. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat. I'm not a fan of Brexit. I never have been, because I think it has cut out so many opportunities for people to go and experience places like Europe and live in Europe and stuff. Yeah. It's just made it all so much more difficult. And I'm not just thinking of me, I'm thinking about my kids, and I don't know if people who voted for it were thinking about the...
Yeah.
But, you know, what they've done over years is just simply decimated public services. And the other thing that I've seen is the way that they treated beneficiaries. They introduced more and more and more sanctions, and people are being sanctioned from hospital beds. You didn't turn up to the appointment. Well, I've got a broken back and I'm in the ICU. Well, I don't care. You are now not going to get any benefit. I mean, what the hell is that? I just don't. It doesn't sit well with me. I mean, I know that I can get very, very vocal on this subject and highly critical, but, let's just talk about intention. People talk about right and wing, the right and wing and left wing are part of the same bird, but yeah, they might be, but they're not, because the intention is different. The intention of most left wing governments is to lift people up, to help people, to provide public services to people, all of the people, not some of them. And on the other side, the right wing, the intention is much more self-seeking, and it's much more let's appease our backers and our buyer, and we just want to stay in power. That's what comes across, no matter what we do, and we don't really care about public services. It's obvious. Otherwise, if you cared about public service, you can say you do, but where's the evidence? There is none. So I think that, the intention is different. So I don't think they're the same.
When you came to New Zealand, you saw a little bit of the national government, and then you saw some different kind of leadership, a different kind of intention with Dame Jacinda Ardern.
Yeah.
What did you make of Dame Jacinda Ardern's prime ministership?
Well, of course, people are going to shoot me down for this, but I thought she was brilliant. She's probably the best leader and prime minister I've seen in my lifetime. And I think, although, again, people will argue about this till the cows come home, because I think she genuinely cared. And she was trying to bring a different brand of politics. And if you really look at, forget all the one-liners and sound bites. If you look at all the things that were actually introduced during her term, they were substantial in terms of helping people who needed that leg up and needed legislation to support their rights. But the thing that really struck me was after the mosque shooting was that she fronted up, and she kept on fronting up. Now, I wasn't used to that. I've not really seen that. Even in the UK, yeah, sure, the Prime Minister will get up if there's a disaster and talk about it, but then it's over to the other ministers. You don't see them again. But she was there front and centre, and I thought that's leadership of a different brand. And then, of course, COVID came along, and, I'm not really want to get into it too much, but I thought that the handling of COVID was superlative in so many ways. She had a lot of tough decisions to make. and I know that a lot of people don't agree with it, and many do, but you know, you have to have lived it to understand how those things came about. And I think she didn't shy away from the tough, the hard stuff. She didn't. She wasn't trying to be popular. She was trying to do the right thing, and so was her team. And I think that characterizes her. It's not about votes. It's about doing the right thing. And, you know, that's what a leader should do, regardless of necessarily their popularity to some degree, is do the right thing.
Yeah. So we've now gone from that level of leadership, sort of a master world-class leader, to Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis and David Seymour and Winston Peters in some kind of push me, pull you all over the place situation with everybody rowing at different times and arguing and saying conflicting things. What do you make of what you've seen so far of this coalition government?
Well, I mean, you know, I've been very severely critical of what they've done. And it's not because I'm like, oh, you know, they're all Tories, so I hate them. You know, it's, well, are you doing the right thing? You know, I can just come back to that. And the answer is no. And the other answer is, why is Luxon is not a strong leader. He's not kept the lid on these guys. So, you know, what it seems to have become is that he agreed to all of these very extreme policies from two minority parties who are now running the country. And, you know, nobody voted for that. No one. I don't believe, other than the 8% who voted for ACT and the 5% who voted for New Zealand First. And again, people can argue that. But if you look at the coalition agreements, like, where are the National Party policies? There don't seem to be very many of them. The whole coalition agreement seemed to hinge around, you know, let's agree to everything that David Seymour wants and everything that Winston Peters wants. And all I've ever seen from Luxon is when they step out of line, he just goes, oh, well, I wouldn't have used those words. You know, he's very, very reluctant to criticize them in any way or say you can't do that. And of course, if you're not going to be that sort of leader, then they know they can do what the hell ever they want, and that's what they are doing. And in my personal opinion, it's to the detriment of this country, and you can see that in the level of public services that have been taken down back to where it was with John Key, you know. So, and that, I just can't, you know, my conscience won't allow me to not, I suppose, say something. And the latest thing about, you know, the pay equality is just a travesty. You can't wrap it up in clean linen and say, oh yeah, but we really still believe in equality, when you just cancelled 30 odd pay equality agreements. You can't pretend that you didn't do that. No, and that's the whole ethos is you know, smoke and mirrors, really, and I don't like that. We need transparency. We need honesty. You know, I think what's forgotten, and not just by this government, but a lot of people, is public service is it means serve the public. The public is not categorized by a small number of people who voted for you or who have given your party millions of dollars or whatever it is. It is the public, right? That's what you're paid to do, is serve the public. And you should be serving the public, not serving vested interests and your own interests. And, you know, we're just seeing too much of it. And I just don't like it.
What would you like to see happen in the next election?
Well, I get shot down for anything I say, probably. But Well, I want to see obviously Labour come back with the Greens. I mean, even a coalition with Greens, Labour, TPM would be helpful to this country. I think the Greens have some very progressive policies. You know, people will go argue until the cows come home. Perhaps, you know, Labour aren't quite as progressive and so forth. And my only comment about it all really is, you know, because there's a lot of people who say, well, Chippy's not the man, and lots of people say, well, he is. But you know, there's there is a difference between, there is one standout difference between people who support right-wing parties and who support left-wing parties, is that right-wing parties rightly or wrongly will get behind their leader, or whoever that leader is, and they will pump that leader, you know.
Yeah.
The left wing, you know, sometimes, and I'll again probably get shot down for this, they tend to kill their own. They because they're not doing enough, they're not extreme enough, they're not doing this, that and the other, and
we're just starting to see a bit of a pushback. I'm pretty sure that Luxon's wrong when he says it's about incumbency. We're seeing a big pushback that is about a rejection of Trumpism in Canada, and you know, a feeling that Trump has actually done countries wrong, has done Australia wrong, and the election over there has quite a bit to do with people going, all right, I've had enough of this rubbish, you know, now this whole right-wing, alt-right, wokey sort of nonsense, and we're just going to get back to looking after each other a bit more. I'm wondering if your thoughts on that are. I'm starting to see a bit of a more sort of international trend away from the Doge cut the public service type stuff that we're seeing in the States.
I think the problem, the real problem is that people have short memories, and voters very short memories, you know, and the thing about history is that you either try to learn from it or you don't. Now, I've studied a huge amount of history around about World War II. I've watched endless documentaries about Hitler and the rise of the Nazis, and the problem I have with it all is that, you know, you would have expected that happened, that it couldn't happen again, and yet the parallels with the Germany in the 1930s are very present in America. You know, like it or not, I mean, some people get very, very offended by this because, you know, obviously Hitler's regime did some very atrocious things. They murdered 6 million people and all the rest of it. But that was that wasn't the whole of it. You know, it didn't start out that way. He fooled a lot of people to become what he became. And these intentions that he had were always there. Those plans he had were always there. You know, it's the way that it was done. You know, it's the way that people were converted into that way of thinking, and they willingly did all these atrocious things. You know, that is what you can see. That is what you can see. But just to answer your question, sorry, is I mean, yeah, there's a backlash against Donald Trumpism right now. Will it sustain? That's I can't answer that. I'm not optimistic because, you know, however many years later from the Second World War, we're seeing the shades of this type of fascism rise again. in a
There's a
country
good
where you wouldn't expect it.
there's a good meme about if there's one thing we've learned from history, it's that we don't learn from history that I really
Yeah.
like. I'm just going to wrap things up now, but I'm just going to ask you before we go. Have you got anything you'd like to say to the audience at G News, all the people that you normally talk to online who know you quite well but have never really heard you until today? So the floor is yours.
Just say hello and thanks for all your very kind comments. Most of you anyway. Obviously, we don't always see eye to eye, but that's what makes us people. But, you know, I think I'd just say that you provide a very valuable counterpoint to all of the other sort of media that seems to you know, act in the interests of particular parties, whereas you provide very thoroughly researched information, and you've also provided a space for people who are like-minded to you know, air their views and so forth. And although some people say it's an echo chamber, you know, we need friends who think the same as us. And you know, I think that the majority of people who follow G News are liberal-minded, fair-minded, nice people who care about other people, and that's why we're still here, still following it. You know, but I'm not a saint either, and I'm sure that there are times when people don't like things I've said, don't agree with them, and you know, that's your prerogative.
Yeah.
And I apologise to anyone I've offended, but you know, I've got my opinions, and sometimes they're very strong ones, and that's just the way it is.
I think the majority of people really love what you have to say, David, and I think you've been a frequent post of the day winner on
Yeah.
G News. So a great writer, and that's all from this very first Get to Know the G News Audience podcast. But hasn't it been great? And I'd like to thank you, David, for coming on and sharing how you see things so candidly and bravely in front of everybody. And wish you a great weekend, and we'll see you online shortly. Have a
Yeah,
great day.
thank you for having me.